when you're young, you think you know everything. And when you're older, learned how to make peace with who I am and where I'm at the moment I'm there. It was because I was actually empowered by accepting my faults. I'm somebody who's definitely a growth mindset, and I want a clear picture of my starting line, and now I can put a plan in place. Hello, and welcome to Bless Your Heart podcast. I'm your host, Laura Hartnett, and on today's episode, we're going to be talking about why believing you are your potential is hurting you. So I hear all the time people talking about, being the best version of yourself. Matthew Kelly is one of my favorite authors. He always talks about this, becoming, the best version of yourself. And basically, it's a different way of saying, living up to your potential and becoming, completely integrated with who and why you were made, your purpose, what your purpose is, and where you're at right now. Like, the steps that it takes to grow into your purpose and to become the best version of yourself. And then I was listening to his recent book, the one that I'm reading right now, about being perfectly yourself. And it was really interesting because he said that a lot of people finally started coming up to him and saying, what about just becoming a better version of yourself? Because sometimes the idea of people don't even know where to start. Like, I don't even know who I am anymore. Maybe they've gone through a traumatic experience like, divorce or something that really shakes you to the core to where you start questioning who you are and what you're here for. And so you almost have to start all the way back from the beginning. And I myself understand this because many times, during my divorce, I'll start, making some momentum, getting some momentum going as to who I am and understanding that. And then life will just pull the rug out from underneath me. And I'm just all the way back from the beginning. And really, what I'm understanding is, there are so many people out there where as I've gotten back into the dating world and I've experienced dating, what I started realizing is a common thread in my life is that I really learned how to make peace with who I am and where I'm at the moment I'm there. It's been a struggle. It's been a really big struggle because I think admitting that you're not your potential, like it's a blow to the ego. Like, here you are thinking like you're doing so good, you're like living large, you're living life. And then all of a sudden life hits you and it really defines really the truth of where you are. And then all of a sudden, sometimes you just go, have this all or nothing thinking, like what we were talking about in previous episodes, this all or nothing thinking of, because I'm not this greater version of who I thought I was, then I'm bad. If I'm not this, then I'm nothing. And that's actually not true. What it is sometimes just life brings about awareness of maybe some of the things that you're struggling with and the truth of who you are. And my whole point is, if you're not embracing the truth of who you are, then you're not going to know where you're going. You're not going to know. Like, if you go up to a perfect analogy that I say is, let's say you have a goal and the goal of your life is to become the best version of yourself. Well, in order to do that, you have to know where you are. Just like in any map, if you walk into let's go old school and let's talk about walking into a mall. If you're walking into a mall, you have to first find out, okay, where is it I'm wanting to go? Okay, well, I want to go to this specific store. Okay, let's go to, I don't know, Dillard's. I know, or Nordstrom. Okay. I want to go to Nordstrom. Okay, well, most of the time after knowing where you want to go and you can find that, then you got to find out, okay, where am I? And you have to find the little sticker on the map that shows you where you are. And so many times in my experience, whenever I've dated recently, I've started realizing how not everybody has awareness of where they're at now. They think that they're all the way, basically right next to Nordstrom. And in reality, they're all the way on the opposite side of the mall. And it's not saying you can't get to your destination, but you're not going to be able to get to and navigate to your destination if you don't know actually and have truth of where you are. And if you don't stop and ask for directions whenever you need it, then you're just going to be wandering around the whole time, and you're going to just kind of go, well, maybe here, maybe here, maybe here. And you're going to feel completely lost. And basically for me, that's what therapy was, is whenever I was just, wandering around and not knowing where I was or what I was doing. I knew what my destination was. I know what I wanted to be. Honestly, I thought I was already there. And I think so many people do. I think that it's kind of a rite of passage too, whenever you're young. I kind of look back at my life, but then I also see how many young people, whenever they're going through adolescence, and they get very confused between what the end goal is and where they're at right now. They many times think, oh, when I grow up, I'm going to be this, this, or this. And they know the job that they want. But then whenever you ask them more questions about just who they are, they can tell you who they want to be, but they're saying that they're that then. And I myself am totally guilty of this. Whenever I first was getting married, I had an idea of who I wanted to be. I wanted to be this, great, strong woman who could encounter and any adversity and could, go through that. And yeah, in reality, I did, but I thought I was already there. I thought I already had the tools. When adversity struck, I would already pull out whatever tools that I had in my toolbox, and I would, come in fighting, and I'd be good. And especially reading all the stories of David and Goliath and all of these things, I was like, I'm good. I've got this. I've totally got this, And you know what? Where I'm not enough, that's where God will be. Not knowing that it's not actually just that simple. God gives us a brain, and he says, okay, God himself is really good with boundaries. And he goes, okay, this is not my responsibility, actually. This is yours. This is part of you growing into who I made you to be. And, in Matthew Kelly's book, he always talks about people asking him, do we ever reach our full potential? We talk about it as if there's an end goal and that there's an end, and does it end when you die, or do you ever get to that point? And I think, honestly, you always are going to continuously grow. And as you get older, and my experience has been, I start to kind of understand, when you're young, you think you know everything. And when you're older, you know that I guess in the middle of it, you think you know nothing. And then towards the end, you realize you know more than you thought. But you still have a lot to learn. And I think that that's just the maturity, of growing. But the reason why I think that this is so detrimental for people is because many times, we, in resolving conflict, which I'll be talking about in a later episode a little bit more about this, but in resolving conflict, if you don't know where you're at and you think that you are your full potential, whether it be conflict with a relationship, with your family member or your spouse or your boss, or any kind of, work relationship, career, in any aspect of it, if you think you are something that you're not, and you then, your fault has been placed in your awareness, somebody came to you and confronted you hey, we have a problem here, and you're over here going, nope, that doesn't make sense because I'm not that. And you don't have that self-awareness that it is actually your fault, it is your shortcoming, and you're not owning that. By you not owning that, you're standing in your own way of success, because then you're not acquiring the real skills to get there. And the first step is owning your shortcoming, owning your faults, and then going, okay, now let's develop a plan. You are here. Don't lie to yourself and say you're at a different point of the map. No, you are here. So now that you know that, don't get discouraged by that, which so many people do. That's what I was referring to earlier. as the all or nothing. Like if I'm not this, what I thought I was, then I give up. And it's saying, no, you're actually, believe it or not, you're actually closer to your goal because now you have awareness. So don't get discouraged now, because now you have a starting point of really understanding the truth of where you are. So now you can build a plan and you can start putting steps into place on this timeline that's going to get you where you want to be. So this is actually a really exciting time. This is a really good thing. And, you know, in my relationship, what I started realizing is how empowering it is to really embrace your faults. And I think that so many people are so scared of having faults because they don't trust their value. And I think that that's what's so beautiful about me having faith. You know, what faith gave me is an understanding of my value. And so it didn't matter whether or not I was my potential or if I was still a beginner. God made me, and so he made me intentionally and with purpose. Therefore, I already have value. I don't have to prove that. So that's not, you know, the point here is to prove my value. And I think so many people actually get stuck on that one step. They're stuck on the step of trying to prove their value that they never get to the point of just going, you know, it's okay for you to just be a beginner, like in life, and like you screwed up, or you know, learning who you are and where you have to start. So, and you know, what faults that you have. So I think that once you embrace your faults, then you can start going, okay, now I know where I'm at. I have a very clear picture of my starting line, and now I can put a plan in place. So I think that the problem that I encountered was the pendulum swung the complete other direction. And I felt like, oh my goodness, this is so empowering to feel like I'm, you know, like I'm actually the one that is standing in the way of my success, whether it be my relationship. Like once I started really understanding at the beginning of my marriage, like I was over here fighting, you know, and blame shifting, and it's your fault, you know, for all these other things. But then once I started realizing, wait, this isn't helping me. We're not getting anywhere. Okay, what's a new plan? And that's one thing that I feel like that is a strength that I have is, you know, I don't like just repeating the same mistakes. And so I was like, we're not getting anywhere here. So I need to change my approach. Okay, what else can I do? And that's whenever I started reading these books, learning these things, and really being honest with myself and seeing my shortcomings and seeing my faults. Once I made friends with that and understood that about myself, that was whenever I could really start the internal work and start changing. And I became so empowered by that I almost tried to then do the opposite and make everything my problem. I then started thinking, okay, I am the whole problem. So I am the whole solution. And I almost like became just almost beating myself up. And it wasn't because I had like self-loathing. It wasn't like that. It was because I was actually empowered by accepting my faults. So then I was like, okay, I have all this stuff to work on. And I became obsessed. Like I read so many books because I realized how much I still had to learn. And I thought that with every book that I learned from, I made progress towards what I really wanted, which was to be this good mom and this strong wife and this good person. And when I started realizing I was standing in my way of that, I just became just obsessed with learning. So what I realized though, whenever I started dating and I got out there and, you know, just went into the real world a little bit, got back into the dating scene, I realized how many people hadn't made peace with that. I think so many people think because we are older that, you know, your potential, you just grow into just naturally, like over the course of time. But you don't grow into your potential if that time you don't choose intentionally to grow. So you can be 45 years old, you can be 40 years old and still be emotionally or wisdom wise the same as if you were in your 20s. If you didn't during those years choose to work on yourself, choose to learn about yourself, take that time out of your daily life in order to do that. And so I think that, this generation is doing a good job of, I think we're kind of in two different worlds where we're doing a good job of understanding like how important it is to take care of yourself, learn about yourself, and making yourself a priority. But sometimes I think we're getting so stuck in the self-acceptance that we're actually keeping ourselves from growing, because it's, we're all telling each other like, you are good just where you are. And I'm like, well, see, that's the difference. Like your value exists regardless, but your potential, that doesn't mean you're at your potential, so those are two separate things. So love who you are, feel valuable so that you don't get discouraged from your mistakes. However, understand that because you are made, that you need to start working on yourself, and you have a responsibility to grow, to contribute to this world, because the closer you get to more understanding what your purpose is and living it, the more you contribute, and the more that you are here for everybody and we all work together. That's like the whole reason for all of this, is so that everyone here together, we grow into our best selves. And it all help, it's through sometimes interacting with others that people are holding up mirrors, and holding up those mirrors, they see the truth of who you see the truth of who you are by them holding up that mirror. And so what I started realizing in dating is that I became very self-aware because of feeling how important it is to be that. And knowing that in order for me to really grow in a relationship with somebody and be open to a real meaningful relationship, I had to have a certain level of self-awareness. And seeing that other people, I started feeling this like disconnect, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it, and I didn't quite understand it, because people would, fall very quickly for me, and it kind of confused me actually, because I was like, as flattered as I am, because yes, I just went through this whole relationship, this whole marriage, and all this trauma from that, and now I'm going through the healing and everything, and somebody looks at me and says all this stuff and seems like they see my value. I was like, well, of course I want to believe that. I mean, like, who wouldn't? Like, oh my gosh, this person loves me. This is great. Like, I mean, yeah, he sees me. He gets me, when in reality, they were very quick also to fall out of love. And I remember just wanting to deep dive into that. And I was like, okay, what is going on here? Like, how can somebody shift so much? Because I myself haven't done a lot of shifting. I feel like I've been very consistent showing up with the same person every time, like, I mean, granted, different situations call for different parts of my personality. But as far as it goes, yeah, how I act whenever it's like Friday night and we're out at like, this really cool speakeasy is going to be a wee bit different than how I'm acting at like, the grocery store, and the logistics of like figuring out, how, all right, let's plan this out. How am I going to juggle, life at home versus life with you, and, all these other things that go into place. So yeah, I mean, of course, it's not like I'm always going to be this carefree, we're just going to fly by the seat of our pants today kind of person. And so I was like, but I mean, it wasn't like I was showing up with major mood shifts or like, any kind of, things that should alert somebody, or cause them to get triggered in any way. So I was like, okay, what is going on? And it's happened like a few times, actually. It wasn't just like 1 or 2 times. It's happened multiple times. And I was like, okay, I'm really wanting to understand this. And then I finally, through reviewing it and really thinking about it and empathizing too, like getting in their shoes and just, yes, they know I had 5 kids before. And, I haven't really made them take on the burdens of any of this, so it wasn't like anything like that, like I said, nothing changed. So I was like, what is it? What could it be? And then I had this aha moment, and it was so clear to me that people fell in love with me because they projected an image onto me of who they wanted me to be and the potential I was to them. And so I realized by them also not just only not knowing their potential or living as if they are their peak potential, they were doing the same when dating me. They were projecting who they wanted me to be too, and not realizing you don't even know me. And once they started to get to know me, the real me is no BS. The real me is very nurturing, very kind, very loving, but also I don't want to lie to you and I don't want to lie to myself. And if there's ever a problem, then I very kindly say, hey, so I'm noticing, this is going on. What's up? I just am curious to know kind of your thoughts on this. And we would start having really mature conversations, and the conversations were usually good. But what I realized is that many times people fall in love with who they feel they get to be when they're with you. And so I think a lot of people thought because of my personality when first meeting me, that I was going to be this just, oh, you're this, oh, you're so wonderful. And I'm very much that person. But I think people thought that they were always going to see me in this light. And, I was basically living up to a projection which was perfect, and I was like, I will never be that girl. I will never be able to be that person. So this is completely impossible task. And so the more real I became, they were wanting me to be something that I wasn't. And, I wanted something real, and they were wanting somebody to just stroke their ego and tell them that they were this person, when I already saw that, wait, there's a disconnect. You think you are your potential when reality, you're not there. But when I tell you that, you see yourself now as nothing. And that's a huge problem. If you're seeing yourself now as nothing, and you think the reality of who you are is nothing, then you're going to just keep on jumping from one girl to the next to the next. Most likely somebody who's young, who they haven't lived long enough to have the experience and the wisdom to see that this person is doing that. So, they go for these young girls, and I see that these young girls are just, feeding their ego because they themselves are wanting them to be that. So everybody's lying to themselves, but the truth does come out. And unfortunately, I think that's the reason why so many divorces happen, is that the truth sometimes comes out after it's too late and marriages have already ensued. So, it's so important for you to get to know who you are and to learn about yourself and to accept who you are and where you're at every stage as you're growing into your purpose, as you're growing into your potential, and as you're growing into your best version of yourself. So that every step, the goal is just to become a better version of yourself. And the next step, a better version of yourself. And that's really what the goal is to in every day wake up and try to be a better version of yourself than the day before. And, that's because the truth of the matter is what happens whenever you reach your potential? Then you can live? Can you not live happy until you reach that? No, that's not true. That's another lie that we tell ourselves is once I'm this, then I'm happy. I can be happy. Once I've done this, I'm successful. I have, A, B, C, D, then life will be good. And that's just not the truth. So, I think that is a huge thing when just, dating. It's really important to have that, awareness as well, because the more aware that you are of who you are and your traits and your faults, you will then be able to see when somebody else is lying about and they're trying to dodge the truth of who they are. A person who has a growth mindset, they're going to be honest with themselves. They're going to see the value of that. They're going to see the value of being honest with themselves. And then they're going to be actually grateful to you whenever you are very kindly and tactfully hold up that mirror and they take a good look at themselves, and they might not necessarily see what they might not like what they see, but they appreciate that you held up that mirror, because that means then that they know where they need to work on something and they want to grow. And that is what relationships are, is in the loving enough safe space, you are exposing each other's faults so that you can then work on them. You're celebrating each other's strengths and together, and you're exposing the faults and the weaknesses that need to be tended to. And by doing that together, you feel less alone, you feel supported, you feel like you get praise, and you get like somebody else kind of helping you judge like your progress or helping you work towards your progress. And that's the whole purpose of relationship. That's the whole purpose of marriage. And that's the reason why in my faith, it's considered vocational, where it's a huge asset and strength for you to have another person who knows you so well and loves you so deeply and unconditionally to hold your hand as y'all are journeying on into life. Because by creating that safe space, and knowing that somebody's still there with you to love you, even at maybe your darker days or those like hard moments where you don't feel your best and you're not being your best self that day, that somebody encourages you and says that I believe in you. I know you're capable of more. And I will help you get there too. I mean, I think that's the reason why for me, marriage just sounded so great. And I'm somebody who's definitely a growth mindset. And I want my biggest issue that I have is I sometimes just get stuck in my own thoughts. And it's really helpful for me to talk to friends and family and somebody else to kind of bounce ideas and be like, man, I'm feeling like this. And then be like, okay, hold on. That isn't who you are. Because sometimes I can just run, down this like rabbit hole and get lost, thinking, oh my gosh, I'm these things. I mean, I'm a very sensitive person. And so sometimes I feel like I can watch like, something on Dateline and be like, oh my gosh, what if I was that person? What if that happened to me? And I'm like, okay, I'm a little bit too much of an empath. I get way too plugged into these storylines. And it's like, okay, wait, I get a little lost. Who am I again? I need somebody to put me back on track and make me remember who I am. But, so yeah, it's really important, I think, for, all of us to do that. And that's something you can give your children. That's something you can give your friends. If you're a boss, that's something you can give your, employees. It's just kind of that guidance and that coaching and teaching them and, by being honest, but also encouraging, being honest in a loving way and a kind way, because, and just letting them know that this is not like, death to your ego is admitting that you had done something wrong. We're going to go over in the next episode how this relates to conflict resolution, because I think that really, honestly, the key to happiness in relationships and in life is conflict. If you can fight fair, then you're going to be doing amazing in life, and you're going to be doing amazing in relationships. If you know how to fight, to where those fights improve your relationships. So we're going to be talking about that in the next episode. But if you have any questions about this and why believing you are your potential is hurting you and why that needs to change and why you need to accept where you're at and you need to know where you're at so that you can grow, please reach out to me. I would love to hear from you, like always. So thank you so much for joining us, and stay tuned for the next episode on conflict resolution. All right, guys, we'll see you then. Bye-bye.